I have a question for you. How free do you feel to show up online 100% authentically as yourself? Well, I've definitely had my own struggles with this, so today I invited a friend of mine who has been an inspiration to me when it comes to content creation and authenticity, especially when it comes to having an online presence. From wealth management broker to successful fashion and lifestyle blogger, Venessa Kaufman saw the need for pursuing fashion with a heart. Striving to highlight how women can be both brainy and beautiful, she lends a heartfelt and independent voice to her readers and social media community. I cannot wait for you to meet her, so let's dive in. Welcome back to the podcast. I have recorded with so many amazing women today, like my cheeks hurt from smiling and getting to connect. And I feel like this conversation is a long time coming. This is a friend that, yes, we became friends through Instagram and then real life friends, as any good 2020 friendship really unfolds. So Venessa, I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Lindsay.
You are one of my favorite people to follow, and I'm just going to list the reasons. Follow on social media. I had texted you about so I took on this new challenge for me, which is like this brand photography membership. So it gets me just out of my comfort zone. We're going to talk a little bit about this today, but doing recurring content. And every time I go to a shoot, I go to your Instagram page for inspiration.
Oh
I
my gosh,
told you that, but this is like so public sweet declaration. And, something that I admire so much about you is your authenticity and how you show up online. So we're going to dive into that today because that is an easier thing. It's easier said than done. And I know you have a journey to getting to the point that you are, but I would love to just start off by having the people who are listening get to know a little bit more of you and who you are in the world. You wear so many different hats. And so give us a glimpse of like, what does your life look like? Like who are you in the world?
Okay. Well, gosh, where do I start? I mean, that question makes me want to start from birth. Like,
right.
Let me tell you my journey to who I am. But
yeah.
I mean, if I were going to truncate it, I went to school for communications, had a crazy passion for fashion. I mean, I designed and sewed my own line when I was younger, when I was a teenager. So when it came time for getting a job, naturally I went into finance.
Of course. Why wouldn't you? It's almost the same.
Go for the stable job, which actually was amazing. It was a wonderful experience. I was in wealth management for 11 years and I learned so much. But through those years, I found that I just still ached for the creative side of things. So after I had my 2 kids, I started a blog because I thought to myself, how can I apply all the things I love? And I thought it costs nothing to start an Instagram page. It costs nothing to just put myself out there other than, it takes some vulnerability. So I started We the Classy and slowly just engaged with people, and I met people like you, and it grew, and I built it to a full-time job where I was working with brands and creating content that I loved and able to show up exactly as who I am online and hopefully inspire others to do the same. So I think in a nutshell, that's who I am right now.
At least today.
Mom, on top of being a wife and a mom. My kids are 7 and 9. Yeah. Oh my gosh. They grow really fast. And then you check yourself. You're like,
Like, wait a
But
minute, hold on, how did this happen? And what I really heard as you shared that too is I think one of the things I resonate most with your content and the value that you provide is I see this fellow woman who is so multifaceted and multi passionate. And that can feel like a balance these days, especially when we're trying to create a brand, is how the heck do I combine all of these things that I love into one place? I mean, what has helped you really organize that? Because you share a lot of different things like on your platforms.
that's true. And I did kind of struggle with that because if you're scrolling, you see people very focused in one area. And then I feel this pressure almost to like not include things because I don't want to be too scattered. But I think my path is that I need to show up as a whole. And my whole, I cannot leave out the things that are really important to me. And I realize um, I can be more inspiring to women who want to start something if they see that I have these different parts. And I also just don't want to. We're all so different. I don't want to
Yeah.
abandon anything.
Yeah.
Right. I find so much joy in sharing about like my marriage and sharing about fashion. And if I find joy in it, then I don't need to abandon it. I don't need to follow a footprint necessarily, or blueprint. So I know that sounds really like obtuse or kind of crazy, but I just am in this belief like we're all different and we're meant to
Yeah.
succeed in our own way. So
I love that so much because the part about like really following what brings you joy, it's like following the energy where your energy is, that is going to translate authentically to
mhm.
people who are watching. And it's just that reminder that I think, especially I think our relationship with social media as a society is really changing. This year was just so tumultuous in a lot of different ways that I've talked to so many women in my life who are completely changing their relationship with social media, some who are leaving it,
Mhm.
others who are using it in a different way. How has this last year shaped your relationship with the like social media platforms in general? Your main one is Instagram, right?
Mhm.
But how has that, if at all, been shaped by this last year?
How I personally use it.
Yeah, or just like both as a creator and because I think I'm one way, I have a different relationship as a creator as I
Mhm.
do a consumer. And I'm noticing I'm consuming a lot less. And so that's therefore changing how I show up as a creator too.
Mhm. I mean, in my mind, we are now in a time period. We are a generation of social media users that we are the conscious consumers. We are very conscious of not only our time spent and how we value our own time, but also like what we're engaging with and who we're connecting with. It used to be social media was more like a magazine. Like you flip through it
Yeah.
and it's beautiful and there's gorgeous photography and traveling and ideas, right? And it's become much more about connection than it ever was before, which isn't that what social media is, right? Are we moving in the right direction in the way?
We're
Like I feel
coming
like,
home.
right? We're coming home to what social media is really supposed to be, which is like authentic connection.
Yeah.
And so for me, it just meant that I really needed to dive a little deeper into myself and allow myself to be more vulnerable as a creator so that, you know, I could connect with people on the level I wanted to. And I think that it's just become a much more valuable experience. Um, and yes, as a consumer of social media, I think I've kept healthy boundaries of how much I use it and just being fully aware of the content I'm consuming.
Yeah. Yeah. So that word boundaries being so key. And
Yes.
a lot of times I don't realize the effect that it's having on me until it's gotten to a point where I'm like, whoa, okay, I'm noticing I'm not feeling great a majority of the day and checking into the thoughts that are causing that and where those thoughts are coming from. And, a lot of times it does go back to how much time I'm spending scrolling.
Right, right. Because it's
Yeah.
easy, and it's also kind of like an addiction where you just like grab your phone when
Yeah.
your brain automatically you grab your phone. So I mean, I do this. I call it I purposefully lose it. So I just like I'll leave it under a few things in my bedroom, and I'll leave, and I'll be making dinner, and I purposefully lose my phone, and that for me helps me maintain that healthy boundary of not just like mindless scrolling, but purposeful scrolling almost.
Yes. I love that so much. The times when I do that where I'll intentionally leave it in another room, I think it points out my addictive tendencies because I'll notice that I'm reaching for it or I feel like there's something missing because it's
Yeah.
not right next to me, which is crazy. And I think it's this balance between, as creators, whether we're creating a business or, content or you're working with brands, it's a part of our world, but we really get to choose how big a part of it. And
Mhm.
I think one of the themes that I see so often with women that I mentor who mainly are, wanting to start businesses or maybe they're even starting with just even honing in on what their personal brand is this fear. And I don't even know, it probably comes from a lot of different places, but just this fear of showing up as themselves. I mean, have you ever dealt with that? I see you as someone who shows up so authentically, but I know we all have such a story behind how we got to the point that we are and the women that we are today. So what has that looked like for you, whether it was showing up on your blog or now social media or both?
So for me, we all have what I consider soft spots that make us very vulnerable, and they can trigger us. Like they come from experiences in our life that have made us that have been caused suffering, trauma, or just struggling in one way or another. And I call those like soft spots because it's tough to put those out in the world and let people judge them or come at you. And for me, I was picked on a lot when I was little for being thin. And I was accused of having eating disorders and this and that when I didn't. And it created a soft spot for me where if someone makes a comment about my body and my weight, it gets to me. So it's really tough to be vulnerable knowing you're going to have some negative emotions arise from being judged, right? It all comes down to being judged. But what I noticed is that even if you have a wall around you and you create the most perfect facade and you protect those soft spots, people will still judge you. You still will have people projecting their viewpoints on you. And that's just the world, right? And so one is remembering that no matter what you do, you're going to face judgment. So you might as well just put it out there. Because you don't want to sacrifice genuine connections for the sake of people who might be judging you. Like you don't want to sacrifice all the good because of one or two bad, right? And then the other part is, wait, I just lost my train of thought.
Happens all the time. Welcome to having a
I got
podcast.
so into my who cares about judgment, but I had to work through that thought process of, okay, it hurts when someone makes fun of my body weight on social media. But I might as well show up as my full self. I don't I have found that it gives you the opportunity to connect on such a higher level, and move past and grow. Oh, and this is what I wanted to say is that really recognizing that that judgment is a projection of that person. That is that person and whatever they're working through. So you got to bless and block, or you got to bless and move on. Thank you. And, let them have their opinions. It has literally nothing to do with how you are showing up. Yeah. The only way you can judge how you are showing up is how you feel inside about yourself and how honest and truthful you're being with yourself.
Mm. I'm like, I just want to retweet that whole last part. And when you're talking about just the connection piece, having those moments of judgment being an opportunity to draw your actual people, like the people you're really here to serve, draw them in closer. And I just got the flash of so many moments where just woman to woman, like I saw you and I saw myself in you. And a lot of times it was you being vulnerable and bold enough to share, hey, I get comments like this. I just remember the one, you're like also the queen of the clapback, like just owning it. The guy who said something about a cheeseburger, I'm like, I think of you every time I see a cheeseburger now. I'm like, yeah, dude.
Oh my gosh.
Or
cheeseburger extravaganza. One of these days I'm going to do a photo shoot just like in a million of cheeseburgers. I don't want to waste food. That's why I haven't done it yet. I'm like, what do I do? I should get them and like take them and donate them maybe, but I haven't figured out the logistics yet.
Or maybe we just cover you in like In-N-Out wrappers and then we let people think that you obviously ate all of those burgers. Or even, you are so smart, and like the content you've been, sharing lately, like pulling from your finance background and just owning, people having an opinion about you showing up as very feminine and talking about sexuality and talking about the real stuff that, like, let's be honest, we're all thinking about this stuff. And then you come back with like educating us about finance and Bitcoin and everything that's going on. I just am like constantly in awe of how you take even those moments, because some people will take that and then use it as like oh, hey, everybody, look at this Karen, and almost like bringing that other person down. And you have this way of saying like, look, okay, that's not okay. That crosses a boundary for me. And I don't need to hate on that person, but I'm going to show up and own the fact that like, okay, that's what you think of me. What did you coin? Like skank finance? Skank?
Yes,
oh my gosh.
I got a message saying that like I asked for the ridicule because I dress like a skink. So I was like, well, you know what? I mean, I'm not going to take that as an insult. I have no problem with that. Like smart skanks. We're smart skanks.
We are smart skanks over here. Okay. I am like totally joining that club. Whenever that becomes a club, I will be the first to join.
It's happening.
Yeah. I think bringing the humor that you're able to bring to it, again, all of this to say, it just gives permission, and everything you just shared about I think that's going to be such an eye opener for people to hear. And I hope you hear it. If you didn't, stop right now, rewind and listen to the part about like, it's going to happen anyway. You may as well be judged for being 100% you. Right. Oh, that's so good. So, go ahead.
Sorry. I wanted to add, you made a point about how I respond. And I think that's a really good point. And if I had advice for those who are growing their audiences on social media and such, I try, even when I get offset, when I get off kilter by a comment or something, it's really important to me that I address it as of how I'm feeling, not attacking the other person. Because for me, this is going to sound weird, but it's about maintaining power over the situation in my space.
Yep.
And the minute I start pointing fingers and bringing other people down, I kind of lose that power in my space. So I try to talk to things as of, that really hurt my feelings, but you know what, guys, we all get our feelings hurt sometimes, and that just makes you human, and we're stronger because of it. Or I can laugh about it, but I just think you let go of controlling your space and your boundaries the minute you start attacking or trying to prove them wrong.
That is so good. That right there should be, I feel like, in a manual somewhere. You need to have a book, or maybe that's just the book. It can be 3 pages, but that's brilliant.
3 page,
Oh,
3 page
good.
book. Shortest book
Smart,
ever.
smart skanks.
Smart
And
skank.
that'll be chapter 3. Yes. So we were talking about this a little bit before we, turn on the mics, about we share this penchant for really being in our heads a lot, overthinking. And I think when we're in this larger conversation about putting ourselves out there, being a little bit vulnerable, what can stop me, I'll just even make it personal, is this overthinking, thinking way too much about how something's going to be received. Or so tell me a little bit about that. Like how does that show up for you, getting in your own head or getting in your own way? And then what have you learned about just how to move through it?
I think the most common, or the most it's shown up in me in the past, is because of the mindless scrolling. Your brain, I actually listened to Angela Duckworth. She did a podcast on comparison, and how it is a natural reaction of the brain. So, number one, if you find yourself comparing yourself to other people, it's natural and normal, and you're not doing anything wrong. Number two, it's not all bad. But if you find yourself then getting in your head, and then it kind of stops you, and that's happened to me before, where it's like you start to see how far someone is, and you just feel like, I don't have time to do that. I can't get there. And you start comparing your life. It can paralyze you in your business almost, if you are mindlessly scrolling and allowing that comparison to get too deep. And I just was thinking about how it's okay to get in your head. We all get in our head. But the best step by step, if I was going to put a science to it, the best thing to say is, how did I get here? Because normally it's through comparison, judgment from others, uncertainty of the next step, or money. When you're in business, it normally comes down to those things that you end up in your head, right? So you got to ask yourself, why am I in my head right now? So you can walk yourself out of it. You can't just say like, be positive, right?
Yeah.
There's no shortcut. It's not like just be positive. And then we feel bad when we are positive people and we can't just snap out of it. That's not a thing. You got to walk yourself out of it. It's a process of emotions and thoughts and logic. So, I mean, for me, I have to think about, how did I get into my head? Why am I sitting here? What's making me spin my wheels? And then I normally, if it's comparison, then you can put logic to it and remind yourself that, okay, this is normal, but the world deserves my gifts, right? The world deserves your gifts. Don't let these things make you stuck. Allow yourself to get in your head, but don't stay there. I hope I'm making sense.
No, it makes so much sense. It reminds me of, I don't remember who exactly this was, but a mentor of mine used to say, try to stay out of your head. It's a bad neighborhood. Like, that's a neighborhood your parents would tell you, don't go there alone, especially after dark. It's just not, it's not good.
That's so funny.
Like,
I read this thing about the term was crap radio. Like,
that's
your
good
brain
too.
has a channel called crap radio. And like, if you're not careful, like if you're not good at recognizing that the channel has been turned to crap radio, then sometimes you start to believe it. But if you're in it and you can recognize it and say, oh, I'm on crap radio right now, like this channel needs to be turned off. Like we need some Beyonce. We need a little Cardi B.
Right. We all need that. Little J-Lo, maybe just the diva channel is what we'll turn it to. And I know what really helped me. It sounds like you love to learn about like a lot of these things too. For whatever reason, I think it engages my left brain and then helps the part that's imagining the worst case scenario or going down this rabbit hole of my failures, is to realize that like the brain at some level is doing that because it thinks it's protecting us. Like it thinks it's protecting us from the worst case scenario, but it just isn't productive when we're out to do big things in the world. So when I started to learn more about that too, my nerd side like really took over. And it's like I put on the like glasses with the tape in the middle. I'm like, well, actually, the reason you're comparing yourself,
not in danger.
right?
Actually,
it helped me a lot. So I think just knowing too, like what helps you get your brain back, your mind back into thinking the things that are productive to the reason that you're here, like you said, that are getting you back into that zone of sharing your gifts because people do need them. I love that.
So since we're talking about like the science of
Let's nerd out.
It's proven that movement helps you change your thought processes. So for me, I have to do something. Like I have to actually start a project or do a new fun, crazy workout, do something, even if it's just like a short doing, and it really does switch your mode of your brain. And there is a science to it. I unfortunately didn't do the research, but I am telling you right now, it works.
You guys, it's science. That's all you need to know.
Science. That's all you need to know.
This is chapter 4 of your book. It's science. That's all you need to know.
It's science.
It's so true. And that's so powerful to remember as well, because sometimes for me, movement is what works. Sometimes it's sitting down and listening to a podcast. Other times it's, connecting with a friend. So just know that every single person gets into their own version of whatever that looks like, getting into their head and allowing some of those comparison thoughts to sink in. But, try different things and find what works for you, because you're not meant to stay there.
No. And I also, for me, allowing myself, like giving myself permission to have those down moments and those hard moments and that I got in my head. You're not expected to like be perfect on this journey of business or getting to be, we're not all going to some endpoint. We're just going through all the emotions. And I mean, I just had a talk with my daughter the other night because she was upset. She got in a big fight with my son, and she said, sometimes I just get so mad and I said, that's okay. We all get so mad and we all get so sad and we all get so frustrated and so happy, so angry. And as soon as we just accept and give ourselves the grace to have all of those emotions, it's much easier. Give yourself permission to get in your head, and also give yourself permission to turn on like Diva Radio, start moving and put some logic to it. I mean, talk to yourself about the comparison. Yeah. Is it serving you? If no, then just turn it off.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And even just tying
social media is what I meant.
Right. Well, or the radio, if you're listening to a really disempowering radio station. Yeah. And even just that boundary, I'm curious what boundaries you have around it. So for me, during the day, I actually log out of the app. I know some people who delete it altogether, but I will usually engage and post and have intentional time in the morning. And then energetically, I just feel better if I'm logged out. I don't have any notifications turned on regardless, but even just logging out, where if I mindlessly tap on it, it's one more step because I'll see, oh, I'm not logged in. That's right. This isn't the time to be on social media. And that's made all the difference. Do you have any boundaries that you put into place around that for yourself?
I am actually on it a lot of the day. But because I respond to messages and I find really like a lot of value in that. Now I do block it off though, where I'll be like, respond to messages. Okay, now work on my phone. I'll work on editing some content. And then I'll think of ideas to talk about. So, I mean, I do sort of block it off, but there's some days where I'm like, I cannot think of one thing to talk about. I have mental fatigue. Yeah. So I allow myself to scroll a little more, engage a little more, redirect my energy to something that I can stomach for the day. And I allow myself that because I am not I don't function really well, super scheduled. It's really good for people. I'm not but I don't function great super scheduled. I function better on like a flexible schedule. Flexible depending on how creative I'm feeling that day, where my head's at, so.
I love that.
Yeah.
That was actually going to be, as we kind of start to tie this together with a little bow, I'm curious what inspires you as a creator. I think it's important also to know there are some people who really just have the gift of being creators. I don't think I'm one of those people. I really have to draw inspiration from other people in order to get into that zone. How is that for you? Like, where do you draw inspiration from?
Well, I think let's just say that even the most naturally creative people lose motivation at times.
Yes.
So no one is motivated every day, 24 hours a day. It just does not exist. So it's pushing through those days where you're not feeling motivated, or allowing yourself to take a break when you're not feeling motivated is really important, because social media gives us this false idea that like everyone is burning and churning all day long, every day, which is not human. So for me, it's a thought. I know it sounds so simple, but for some reason I wake up with the clearest head. So, and I will have like, oh my gosh, I feel so passionate about this thought about, today. So I started Hump Day Wednesdays to start talking about sex more on my platform. And I got so excited to talk about it. And so it's more the subject matter and just realizing that I can connect with other women on something so vulnerable and so enlightening and enjoyable, and something that'll make us smile. So I don't have one thing that motivates me, though I have to say connecting like with people like you who are, giving permission to women in a way to just walk in their truth and go after what they want, and just the honesty of it. I love it, and that helps me tremendously on when in a different way. So it's like the creative side, I have these thought processes, and the motivational side, it's the village of women, right? So it's all the things.
Isn't that so true? I feel like when I'm over complicating it, I'm not intentionally making it about myself, but I'm thinking like that I have to come up with the answers versus realizing all I have to do is listen. And sometimes like the simplest thing, an Instagram comment or a DM or going back to an old post that got some really thoughtful comments will inspire, the next podcast or the next thing that I share. And I can tell that you do that really intentionally too, just even as like an observer. Even though we are friends, like I feel as though when I'm observing your content, it I feel as though even if we didn't know each other, like my opinion would be just as valued, or my comments, back to stories where you'll ask for feedback, or should I start Hump Day Wednesday? You did say you had just one person vote no, right? And it was an accident.
She sent me a DM. She's like, oh my gosh, I did not mean to do that. And I was like, that's actually shocking. I think that's the first I ever put out there where it was 100% yes.
Yeah. I
was like actually really surprised because I was on the fence about doing it. And then I saw that and I thought, oh, there's space. There's space to talk about sex on here. So let's do it.
Well, I loved that you shared, right? That's like what you want to be in your next life, or this one is, a sex therapist, and just so many, I think what this all comes back to as well is you are such a permission giver to open up conversations that people are having just maybe not on their platforms, and opening up a conversation to normalize whether it's mental health. I know you're doing this series on that, or some of these other topics. And so if people listening to this don't already follow along on social media or your blog, where is the best place for them to find you?
So are you on We the Classy as my Instagram is probably the best way to connect. And it's that simple.
Yeah, I'm like, sometimes people are like, oh, sometimes people will throw a curveball. They'll be like, actually, I'm really active over here. I'm like, I had no clue.
Well,
But
I saw this thing where you can get a phone number that your followers can text you at. And I was thinking of doing that.
I have that, and it's really fun. Yeah.
I thought I saw it in your profile. So I was going
Mhm.
to ask you questions about that.
Yeah,
So I may do that because I thought it'd be really cool to connect like that too.
it's really fun.
But right now, it's just the easiest is on Instagram. I do have my blog, and then I have a little store that I'm slowly growing, one piece at a time. It's very intentional. So I'm allowing myself to move slow on that part. But mostly connect with me on Instagram. I'm very excited about my mental health Mondays, my hump day Wednesdays, and then finance Fridays. I'm so excited to just talk about all three of those areas. They're all big parts of me. And I think, like you said, normalizing those discussions is so key.
Oh, I'm here for all of it. You're one of the people, that's how I can tell how much I'm a consistent viewer of your content. You're one of my first my mom calls them bubbles, like the Instagram story bubbles. I watch your bubbles. That's what my mom would say. So thank you just so much for how you're showing up in the world, and just for being the human that you are, because you make such an impact on me, more than you could possibly know. And I know I'm speaking for so many other women.
Oh, I feel the same about you. I appreciate you so much.
Okay, so one last question, and this is a fun one. I feel like you are going to really be down for this. This is one of my favorite questions to ask, especially women who I have a friendship with that, we don't always get to ask these kind of questions of our girlfriends. So, one of the things I've been really intentional about is pausing to acknowledge where I am great. And even if it's like the tiniest little thing, a moment in the week, or a moment where whether I did it at that time or not, I can pause and just acknowledge, like, I was a total powerhouse in that moment. So we just call it literally your powerhouse moment. And it can be anything, big or small, that's happened like in the last couple of weeks. But usually the first one that comes to mind is the best one.
I'm really proud of this, and I haven't been able to really talk about it on social media just because my daughter's like confidentiality, but I felt so good about this. Over the past few weeks, she's been coming to me like at the end of the day. If I'm in my bedroom, she'll like come in my bedroom, and she asks me these super hard questions about puberty and about all these things that I thought would be terrifying as a parent. She was asking me about like, why do girls wear bras? And she's on a roll right now. Mm-hmm. I feel like she just has so many questions. And I just am really feel so comfortable responding to her. And I felt so good that she feels comfortable asking me. So, I've never felt like so good about being a mom. And also just as being a totally vulnerable woman, and also making sure that generationally she is feeling open about certain subjects. It's so important to me, and feeling healthy about certain subjects. So that's when I felt really like amazing.
That's so beautiful. Wow. And really, just what a lucky girl she is to have a mom like you. So thank you so much for being here. This was really fun. We'll have to do this again.
Thank you for having me. It's so fun.